Hello and welcome to IDRA's free webinar series on equitable practices for online learning, which is designed to support educators, families, students, and other educational stakeholders during this pandemic. Today, we're focusing on the role of a public school principal in leading their campuses during COVID-19. For all our participants, please type your name, role, and location in the chat so that we can see who's in the room. I am Dr. Nilka Avilés, an IDRA Senior Education Associate, and I am so pleased to have this special panel of principals. Mr. Jorge Cruz, would you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jorge Cruz. I am the principal of Scobie Middle School in Southwest Independent School District. A little bit about myself real quick. I've been in leadership about the past 10 years. And I've been here at Scobie Middle School as a principal. Hopefully, got here in the spring of 2019. And due to COVID, unfortunately, I really don't want to claim that I still have a full year of completion in a normal environment, obviously. But again, it's an honor to be here and a pleasure, a very humbling experience for me to be here and share a little bit of being able to lead throughout a pandemic.
How about you, Rawan Hammoudeh?
Good afternoon. My name is Rawan Hammoudeh, and I am principal at Cotton Academy in San Antonio ISD. Some of the leadership positions that I've held, of course, the assistant principal. I've mentored administrative interns. I've also worked for the curriculum and instruction department. I was an instructional coach as well.
Thank you. Dr. Timothy Vaughn.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're up and awake. We thank the Lord we're here today. I am Dr. Timothy Vaughn, the proud principal of Wren Middle School in Edgewood Independent School District. Like my colleagues here, Mr. Cruz, I came in the middle of a school year in 2019 to take over Wren Middle School. So I came in and quickly in the spring, we had a tumultuous situation of what we're in right now, a pandemic. But by the grace of God, we'll be able to turn this thing around and be able to do what we need to do for our children. I've been in administration for 9 years. I started at 29. I'm now 37 years old. I've taught in the state of Kentucky and in the city of Louisville. I've also taught in the state of Ohio. I was an administrator in Dayton, Ohio. Been an adjunct professor. Did my doctorate at Miami of Ohio University. Been an adjunct professor at Tamusa here in the great city of San Antonio. So I do have some higher ed background as well. So I'm thankful and grateful to be able to be on the line with you all today. And I pray that we are all able to learn something in this session this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We know that you are extremely busy, but we appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experiences with us as we discuss the impact of COVID-19 on your work. And we always like to have time for a few questions from our participants. So if anyone has a question, please put your question in the chat box, and we will address the questions as we are having the series. The first question I'd like to address it to Dr. Vaughn. What is your vision and hopes for the education of all children in your school? And then next person to answer that question will be Ms. Hammoudeh and then Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Dr. Avilés. Real quickly, the vision here at Wren Middle School is we're laying the foundation for lifelong learning at our school. And so what we're doing is we're tapping into the metaphysical constructs of our students, meaning that we believe in an ontological construct and an aspect of the development of our children here at Wren Middle School. When I say ontology, what ontology means is what it means to be or what it means to be fully alive. So we want our kids to be fully alive and be in the experience every single day. And what that means is we want to develop the whole child. So it's not always just about academics, but it's about developing them spiritually, social and emotionally, physically. We want the whole child to be developed at Wren Middle School, and that is the ontological aspect of what we're doing at Wren Middle School. Thank you.
Rawan, what is your vision for your children at your school?
So my vision and my hopes for my students here at Cotton Academy are, my vision is to ensure that regardless of their socioeconomic status, their race, their ethnicity, that they have access to a high quality and equitable educational experience so that they're well prepared with the academic skills and the character traits that they need so that they can be successful in college and in their careers.
Very good. Mr. Cruz, how about you?
So here at Scobie, our vision and mission, they haven't changed, although we are experiencing a pandemic. But we wanna make sure that our students learn the skills and the knowledge that they need to become productive citizens in society. As Dr. Vaughn kind of mentioned, being productive in society. Currently, obviously, because of the pandemic, my vision and goals have revolved around the recovery and also the reinvention of what we're experiencing and how education is going to be looking the new norm moving forward. And here at Scobie Middle School, we want to ensure that we want to focus that every student is set up for success, whether they are in a remote or face-to-face setting. We also, more than ever, we're actually prioritizing our focus with the social and emotional well-being. And one of these obstacles that I hope that are removed as quickly as possible is these obstacles and barriers, what our kids are experiencing, our families are experiencing. And that's making an impact on those gaps that our students are experiencing at this time.
Great. Great visions, right? We want to make sure that we address the whole child, like Dr. Vaughn said. It's not just the academic piece, but everything else that goes with the whole child. And of course, their families. So how have, during this pandemic, how have you supported and continue to support your teachers when this shift to distance learning, from face-to-face to distance learning and virtual classrooms that happened, in the spring, all of a sudden, you were coming from spring break, and then all of a sudden, here it is, and without any prior knowledge, whether in books, in theory, or in practice, with this pandemic, how have you helped support your teachers to be able to shift from what they were before, face-to-face, and the normal life, right, that we used to have, to now? Can you address that? Go ahead, Mr. Cruz.
So we quickly shifted from being, obviously, like as you mentioned, Dr. Avilés, being reactive in the spring, where we didn't know how it's going to impact us returning from spring break. I do got to give kudos, and I got to give credit where credit is due to our district for being so proactive and ready for the possibility of going remote after spring break 100%. So what happened is we had several instructional leaders and content experts, not only from campuses, but from the district, that came together to be able to get a strategic plan going, and in essence, giving those tools to the staff and the students about those electronic devices, that if in case this was going to turn into that 100% remote, we were in a way ready. And then we have also been working before the pandemic. We had already made the transition into Google, which deals with the learning platform of Google Classrooms and the instructional platform at that moment. So I think at that moment, I think the support was there in the reactive piece, and we did our best that we could under those circumstances.
Right. How about any addition, Dr. Vaughn?
Thank you, Dr. Avilés. Really going back to what Mr. Cruz was saying, our district, under the direction of Dr. Eduardo Hernandez, our superintendent, really put together a strategic plan on how to really disseminate technological devices so that we are now a one-to-one district with children with technology. And so the big word that we were using and we're still using in our district is pivot. We're just having to learn how to really pivot and be ready for whatever comes our way. You know, it's a whole different ball game now. It's education is a paradigm that really is now shifted. And so we really have to be prepared for this technological wave. And so what we were able to do on our campus, I was able to, I had a partnership that I developed when I first came down here to Texas with Microsoft, and we're a Microsoft school district. So since we were using Microsoft Teams, and that's what we're using in our district as a platform, on the secondary level, we were able to get Microsoft to come in virtually and do some trainings for our entire faculty. We had also utilized IDRA during that time in the spring, as you remember, Dr. Avilés, and we also utilized our faculty members who had a knack for technology, man. We started tapping in to individuals on our campus, teachers, our instructional coaches that had a real gift in calling to be able to nurture our community in the area of technology. Because I'm telling you, a lot of individuals were having a hard time adjusting to the technology. So of course you have your PLCs, what we call edge meetings, where we do a school-wide professional development process to prepare our folk for the new wave of education in that spring term. So it was a lot of laying the foundation and, you know, laying the groundwork and the framework for what was getting ready to come in this school year. So we were able to make a good pivot. Our district really did a lot of investing in technology and bandwidth and all the different pieces that we needed for our children to be successful. Because at the end of the day, learning is not going to stop. Regardless of a pandemic, we still got to educate our babies. So that's where we are at Edgewood ISD. Thank you.
Welcome. How about you, Rawan?
I also give first and foremost credit to our district. They did a phenomenal job. Superintendent Pedro Martinez, Chief Academic Officer Patty Saltzman. They were on it. Our students didn't have technology, and within a couple of weeks, we were one-to-one, meaning that each student had a device. So that was first and foremost, and we began with the CNI department under the direction of Patty Saltzman was able to develop a plan so that students could engage in learning for a week while teachers attended professional development, because this was all new to us, a different way of teaching and a different way of learning. And so those were two of the biggest pieces. And then of course, transparency and communication with our teachers. Like I remember we were doing faculty meetings on a daily basis. And it wasn't the faculty meeting where people show up and they're like, when's it going to be over? It was the faculty meeting where everybody is logging in because they want information. And so that was a big piece. Text messages coming in at midnight, asking questions. It was a lot of the communication, the transparency, as well as teacher-led PD sessions. Much like Dr. Vaughn said, we have those teachers that just have strengths in those areas, and they were leading their own PD sessions. They were doing a phenomenal job at that. And we also engaged in PLCs where teachers would model how to implement some of the research-based practices that we implement here at Cotton in a virtual setting. And just advocating for additional resources. So one of the pieces that teachers were struggling with is they're two completely different ways of teaching, right? When you're in person, when you're in a virtual setting, as well as when you're in a virtual setting and you've got some in-person students. And so we tried to troubleshoot, how can we put teachers in a more natural environment? And so one of my teachers, my 8th grade teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, came up with a phenomenal idea where we've got a TV screen at the back of the room, a webcam, and a swivel set up, and kids at home are able to interact with their peers. Like they're raising their hands. Kids in class are turning around and calling on their peers. Phenomenal. And so definitely advocating for those resources, because that was a lot of funding, and our superintendent was very gracious and did provide us with the support there. Front loading professional development on the new learning platform, Canvas, that we were using. Just all of these different systems, but also the social emotional support that teachers needed, and that our kids need, right? But we need to, because we needed to remember the fact that just because I look like I'm okay as an adult, I might not be okay. And so definitely being that listening ear and encouraging them to open up, so that you could provide that support. And if I couldn't provide that support, I'm going to go find that person that can. And then definitely taking stuff off their plates, just focusing on the highest leverage pieces, for the fact that it is so much more tedious when it comes to planning and developing the lesson online. And so they were overwhelmed. My teachers are going to bed at 2 and 3 in the morning, and that's ridiculous. And so I did my best to remove pieces off their plate. My instructional coaches were phenomenal. They started making assessments, which our teachers used to do, APs, calling parents, just all hands on deck to help and support each other.
Great, mentioned great information, specifically how, to begin with, there's a digital divide that still exists, and how then superintendents took all the resources they have to try to put those technology equipment and hotspots, especially in those areas that are rural, more like an area of Southwest. They have so much space that they have to cover, and trying to be innovative. I remember some people having buses to have hotspots in buses, and people coming to where the buses were so they could have the technology. So it is amazing, the work that has been done, and your leadership in doing these things. Additionally, you mentioned, Rawan, that it seems like, because of this new way of doing things, before people probably went home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Now it's like you're on the clock like 24/7. And how do you help support teachers? Because like you mentioned, they're all overwhelmed. How do we support them? Well, one way is, like you said, taking off some of the things that, somebody else might be able to do in terms of support staff to help them. And being very observant. I know you mentioned that, you have to have that ear open and being observant to the needs, not only of the children, but of the adults, that have also kids at home learning with the different platforms, and then they have to be teaching. I mean, it's a lot, like you mentioned. But I know that you have had great successes in your experience. So can let's see, Dr. Vaughn, can you say some of the successes that you have experienced even during this COVID era?
I'm going to say this. I know everybody may not be a believer. I'm a preacher, but by the grace of God, I'm going to tell y'all got to give me a raise the roof. We've been able to retain all of our faculty members during this pandemic. I'm telling you, Principal Hammoudeh, she hit the nail on the head. This has not been easy for teachers. So being able to retain all of the teachers up until this point, no one's walked off the job. That is something that is highly amazing. Being able to nurture them. What I do is almost a weekly, I call it the woo-woo cart. I go around in the morning or in the afternoon. I take them coffee, donuts. I'm feeding them. We're doing different activities. We're doing giveaways, whatever has to be done to let them know we love and appreciate teachers. Because without the teachers, nothing's going to happen on the campus. So that's what we had to come and think outside of the box, because like my colleague over here was saying, they're up all at times of the night. So we're trying to, mitigate some of these things by showing them how much we love them. We're trying to nurture them in different ways. And I'm very proud of the teachers being here. They haven't walked out on the kids. And so I don't, folk on the line, I don't know, some of our environments, we're not in Alamo Heights. So, we're dealing with different situations that we have to have extraordinary people dealing with our children. And so you got to be called by God. You have to be anointed to be able to be doing this kind of service. And that's what it is, a service. So I'm very proud of that, and really building up a supportive, familial environment, focus on student academic achievement, but also focus on student development as the whole being. And we still have to remain focused on the goal that's on our children. Even in the midst of this pandemic, we still have to remain focused on nurturing our children. We can't let the pandemic be a stumbling block for the success of our babies. And so that's the ministry I'm in right now. We can't, take a break or get complacent or sit by the wayside and hope this pass through. We got to be ready to serve and support them each and every day. And so I'm very excited about that. Once again, my other colleague, Mr. Cruz, was talking about the SEL components. This pandemic has brought out some real phenomenal pieces of how to cultivate the children and the teachers and the custodial staff, the child nutrition workers, how we work on them in that social emotional aspect, because a lot of folks are going through a lot of different things, and then taking care of the physiological aspects of what they're dealing with. They don't have bread and food and all that at the house. How we expect them to come in here and be ready to learn? So I'm really thankful. This pandemic has been, I've lost a family member. Everybody has been touched by this pandemic. But the beauty of it is that now we start to look at the empathetic side of the spiritual side of what we're doing with how we're nurturing people. And I hope this continues to change the whole focus of what we're doing in the educative process, because things will never be the same in our profession. So that's why I'm sorry I had to preach on that, but
That's right. How about you, Mr. Cruz? What successes have you seen?
The last part with that Dr. Vaughn finished with is kind of where I'm picking up, Dr. Avilés, is that, I have conducted empathy interviews with staff so that it helps me understand where they're at, how they're feeling, that way I know where I can support them. And, the building relationships, and anytime that you speak to your staff and you address your staff, especially during this time of the pandemic, is you have to continuously let them know that they're valued. They're the most important thing, they are the most important job and the profession in education, because what happens inside those four walls, that's where the glory, the magic, everything happens. Because without our teachers and successful teachers, then the school is not going anywhere. If I would be, you will be lying, or you will be not being truthful if you were to say that as educators, as leaders of our organizations, campuses, that our goal is not to be a blue ribbon school and be successful, then we will be lying to ourselves, right? The staff, it's amazing how close they have worked together during this pandemic. As stated before, we do have some staff members that are way different level when it comes to technology. It's uncomfortable, and it's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable, because that's what brings the best out of us. And then the continuous growth with technology, not only for staff, but also for students. We kind of joke around about our staff, our students, they know so much more in technology. Well, that might be true, but that might be mostly on the social part of technology. But when it comes down to instruction and the learning and the continuous growth, that is essential. They have made a 180-degree turn, and it shows with our staff members. An example, yesterday we had our first half day that our district has allocated for our teachers in the spring. We have 3 scheduled. Yesterday was our first one. And in the afternoon, as I'm walking around looking at planning and how teachers are doing, how they're interacting, I walked into 2 separate contents, but it was the science department modeling and supporting the social studies department on the technology and the best practices that they have been successful with. And that's beautiful to see. It's an aha moment. And all I can do is praise them and thank them for everything that they do. So
very good. How about you, Rawan at Cotton? What have been your successes?
I definitely take it back to the teachers. Take it back to the teachers because they are my bread and butter. I cannot teach all these kids on campus. And the magic does happen within those four walls in that classroom. And I always tell them, I say, I've seen thousands of teachers teach, and you are the best teachers because they really are. And they've been troopers. They've managed to still, with all these different components and all these changes that have happened, they're still teaching those rigorous lessons, and they're still providing students with an equitable education. I mean, they're unstoppable, and their passion and their dedication to student success is definitely shining through. Not that it didn't before, but because of the circumstances, it is at a completely different level. And so across the board, pretty much, we've been able to sustain the student achievement rates, which is huge. It's huge. We definitely didn't start that way. And I know that when we first started the year, we have data meetings during our PLCs, and I would have teachers coming in, and I would ask them, okay, so how did they do this week? And they would just, they were so hard on themselves because their kids were not performing. And it's kind of like, guys, it's okay. We're going to get there slowly but surely. And they're like, no, they're not doing well. And so I need to revamp things. And so they were being even harder on themselves. Some of the other pieces are, we're really, really big on growth mindset, but that has really shined through, especially at this point in time, because they're holding professional development sessions on their own, and they're inviting their colleagues, that they are watching videos of each other teach, so that they're able to see how those research-based practices are being implemented in the virtual setting, and so that they can improve, and of course, so that student achievement rates can improve, continue to improve. They're just phenomenal. They're supporting each other. I've got teachers helping each other troubleshoot with technology. It's like the 8th grade teachers in the 3rd grade teacher's classroom, and the kinder teacher is up in a 4th grade teacher's classroom. And so just definitely that cohesiveness has increased on campus as a result of that. Everybody has always been a leader, but it's definitely shining through more so now than ever. And another huge positive is we're getting closer to closing that digital divide, because before you could hand a Chromebook to one of my 5th graders and they might not even know how to turn it on. And they're getting better at it than we are. They're holding their own Zoom sessions.
Nilka.
That's great. That's great. Yes, sir.
First of all, there's something on the chat room. I'm going to read it to everybody. Melissa says, thank you for showing your support to teachers. I'm sure that makes a big difference. Parents see the difference between teachers who are not supported by their leadership. And so that's praise for the panelists. And then there's a question. How do you address attendance and engagement?
You want to take it, Rawan?
Sure. So for the attendance piece, it's a lot of communication with the parents, but I can't even say that administration can take credit for the attendance piece, because teachers take it to a whole different level. We use Class Dojo here at Cotton Academy. And so at the beginning of each Zoom session for those lessons, teachers are seeing who's logging in, and whoever's not logging in, they are messaging those parents. Your kid's not online, their camera's not on. So it's a constant communication. We also have incentives for our students, for our teachers, and for parents. If they meet the attendance rate for the week. And as far as the engagement piece goes back to the research-based practices, such as call and response. We use a lot of teach like a champion practices here at Cotton. The engagement piece also has to do with chunking content, right? Because we all know that when we're sitting in meetings that are an hour and a half long, or PD sessions that are an hour and a half long, as adults, we tune out. And so keeping those pieces in mind and planning in a different manner so that we are engaging our kids and making sure that they're communicating and collaborating, because they want to talk to their peers. They want to collaborate with them. So considering all those different pieces has really been instrumental.
Very good. Anyone else? Dr. Vaughn, you want to add anything to that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Avilés. I'm going to tell you right now, attendance, woo, that was a monster in the beginning. So what we had to do was, of course, as always, come together as a team, do things in a systematic process. So we had to develop an attendance task force where we have I call it coordination of services, where you got your counselors, you got your social workers, admin, your teachers, everybody putting all of the resources together to find our children. And so that was a huge undertaking, because we had a lot of young people who would just refuse to get online. And we're still battling with a good amount of population of young people who still are refusing. So we had to go as far as in the district, revoke remote learning letters, all types of different pieces. So when they start to matriculate up to high school, that would be in their PRC file to let the parents know we're holding you accountable, because we're fighting for your children to get in here and get their education. So attendance, that's been a major fight, because we know attendance, ADA is tied to funding. So we on that stuff like nobody's business. Engagement, of course, once again, back to what my colleague was saying, when you're trying to get kids engaged on a virtual platform, you have to be innovative. You had to have some flavor on that lesson, because our block schedule is 72 minutes. And how do you hold a middle schooler for 72 minutes? You got to have brain breaks in there. You got to chunk it. You know, we're using Nearpod. We're using Desmos for math. We're using Flipgrid. We're using every type of tool, technological tool, to keep them engaged, to enhance their learning, to make it fun, exciting, because nobody wants to hear a teacher talk for 72 minutes. I don't want to hear myself talk for 72 minutes. So engagement is another process of how we really have to nurture our children so that they stay tuned and stay focused on what they need to do to be academically successful. So I'm going to tell you right now, attendance and engagement on this virtual platform, that has not been an easy process at Wren Middle School, but we are making gains by leaps and bounds. The teachers are creating innovative lessons that are out of this world. I didn't even know you can do some of this stuff on. They're teaching me. I'm trying it. You know, I'm trying Nearpod. I'm doing breakout rooms on Teams, and so I'm really grateful for all of the hard work our teachers are doing. I mean, like going back to what Ms. Hammoudeh was saying. Hammoudeh, I'm sorry if I'm messing it up. Hey, the teachers are just doing some great work. And another little tidbit, in our district, we're starting to roll out some incentives for teachers through the TIA process. So the teachers deserve any extra monies if they can get it. If they can get the gains, they deserve to be blessed with those finances. So I'm excited about what's happening at Edgewood ISD. So thank you, that person, whoever that was that put that question in the chat. I hope we answered your question.
Wait, I just want to say that because this is a book that actually has this title, and I have used it in my classes at UTSA. Is you got to feed the teacher or they'll eat the kids, and it is true. You know, we got to be able to support our teachers so that they can actually, in turn, do their best for their kids. How about for you, Mr. Cruz, for attendance and engagement? Is it something different, or is it the same as the other principals have discussed?
As far as attendance, you know, that communication piece is essential. I know that at first teachers really felt that it was just another thing that they had to do to be able to go back, because we want to make sure that obviously attendance is taken right and accurately. And so those were the challenges that we were facing at the beginning. We are very fortunate. We're blessed that we didn't have, when it comes down to no-shows, we actually were good in that category. And then throughout, when we first started, everybody was going obviously virtual this school year, and then it continued into more of a hybrid, started bringing in more groups of students. And right now we're sitting at pretty good numbers with face-to-face and also virtual students as well. The teachers were doing great things to be able to ensure that they're taking attendance accurately by having alternate ways of taking attendance, because remember, we did have the students are asynchronous learners, and at that moment we cannot make sure, we got to ensure that we're providing that opportunity for those students to throughout the day still be able to, if they were not able to participate live when that class was being delivered, that instruction was being delivered, then at the same time we have to make sure that those kids are getting the opportunity throughout the day to be able to do the work, which in essence teachers had to go back the following day, and make sure that they checked that the students were engaged. So that kind of was a rocky start, just because again, it's something different, something that we have never experienced before. And I can tell you from experience that if it's difficult for an adult to do virtual learning, then I can guarantee you it's very difficult for several of our kiddos, when in respect to attendance. In respect to the engagement piece, we use different technology platforms, such as the resources that y'all were talking about. My colleagues here on the platform is, excuse me, like when they were doing whatever like a warm up, whatever recorded lesson they had, whatever they were doing when it came down to using the swivels, and be able to do that as well, because the expectation was that the teachers had to record their lessons daily as well, at least one lesson, so that they can be able to upload it into the Google Classroom for those asynchronous learners. And so any way that we can find them to ensure that they were participating, getting involved, and being effective, then that was the part that we were continuing to do.
Very good, very good. How about any organizations that had helped you achieve this success in support of teachers throughout the year? Any organizations that had helped you in supporting your teachers?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and
go ahead, Dr. Vaughn.
Definitely number one, we definitely have IDRA as a support system on our campus. That's a partnership that we have here in the district at our school. And then I have a gentleman in the city by the name of Dr. Eli Whitney. He's a cardiologist in the city of San Antonio. Amazing man. He actually helped San Antonio ISD some years back, but he has a program called The Most. And Dr. Whitney, I'm just going to put it out there. This brother has single-handedly, I'm going to put the number out there, donated over $20,000 to our school. That's the type of brother I am. I'm gonna make every effort to do what it takes for our kids to be successful. We have a literacy initiative going. He's gotten behind that for us. We're getting kids books. I mean, we're doing whatever it takes, because our Lexiles are low, and so we're trying to really develop our children. So once again, I'm a big proponent of building partnerships with folk who can come in here and nurture the kids, the teachers. He has mentors. We have mentorship program. We hadn't been able to really dive into that because of the pandemic. But once we release from this pandemic, the floodgates are going to open in that regard to be able to nurture the kids with mentors. He does free field trips. He does it all, man. So Dr. Whitney has really been a blessing. Of course, I said I have a relationship with Microsoft, a direct connection with Microsoft, because we are a Microsoft school and district rather. And so we have that connection as well. So I really believe in nurturing the community around. We got, Peter Piper, whoever can nurture the kids, nurture the upbuilding of what we're trying to do. I'm gonna go get dollars. I don't need coupons. I'm going out to get dollars to make things happen on the campus. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm about. And we're making it happen for our kids, one process, one phase at a time. And like my brother down there said, Mr. Cruz said, we all fighting to be a blue ribbon school. We all fighting for excellence. And so it takes the entire community to bring excellence into the piece. And the other component I saw in the chat is the parents. That's another big piece that we're really going to nurture going into next school year, getting our parents involved, getting them literate on the technology, getting them activated to be able to nurture the kids, because we got a lot of kids watching their siblings. We have a lot of young people going to work with their tias and their tios and mama, daddy. They're doing all these different things, and we got an asynchronous environment. But when that stops, because that's going to eventually, it's going to come a time where children have to come back to school. Are we ready for our children to come back in and be successful? So the partnership piece is powerful, and I'm gonna go out and do whatever. I'm gonna use this terminology. I'm gonna hustle whatever I have to do to make it happen for our children in this building.
How about you, Rawan? Any organizations that are helping you achieve success throughout the year?
So it's really been a challenge with the partnerships this year due to the pandemic. In the past, we'd had mentor programs. We did, for example, Big Brothers, Big Sisters with Cristina Martinez, one of our board members that actually works there. But this year, it's been a real struggle. We have reached out to our councilman, Roberto Treviño, and he's been kind and generous in donating funding, as well as Diego Bernal, our state rep. And so they have been able to donate, but overall it's been a challenge with the organizations partnering with them.
And for you, Mr. Cruz.
Oh, I'm actually excited to talk about this because, so thank you, Jared, for asking that question, because, success for us, the way it looks, is to ensure that all students, that we have equitable and excellent student outcomes, right? That's the only way that we're going to move the needle. That's the only way that we're going to make progress. In addition to all the partnership that we've had with the local businesses across the street and things like that, and my personal leadership growth has really been impacted in a very positive way with the support from the Holsworth Center. I know that we do have a few districts here in the San Antonio and the surrounding areas, and also across the state of Texas, that have really been in this partnership with the Holsworth Center that has provided several, allocated resources to make sure that there are growing leaders in the system, so that in essence, as we move forward, that we're able to identify those high potential leaders from the classroom to leading to administration, obviously into the principalship, and then even at the district level. So that has been very exciting. It's a lot of fun, engaging work that has really developed my personal growth, so that in essence, through different subgroups and committees that we've done, for example, we are also part of the distributor leadership here at Southwest ISD, but also particularly here at Scobie Middle School, which we're able to identify those teachers that are willing and also able and ready to lead and make that transition, because we know that if we can get those educators, those teachers to be strong, successful instructors and teachers for these students, then these students will perform great results, and these kids will grow, and that is the results that we're always looking for. So this year, even though through a pandemic, I still have been able to be a part of the Holsworth Campus Leadership Program that we do virtual, that we meet, and as I mentioned before, it's intense, but again, it's very research-based, and I really have benefited from that. So that is part of what we are experiencing right now.
Very good. It's important to have partnerships, right? But we know that the pandemic has put a lot of kind of like, because you can't go to the schools because of, contamination and all of that. We do have actually, Mr. Cruz at your school, IDRA actually was supporting the ELAR department trainings and actually face-to-face demo lessons and things of that nature. But when the pandemic hit, then of course we haven't been able to be at the schools. The way we actually continue via virtually was with them through the UTSA master teachers that were actually there conducting equity audits and doing some research in helping teachers. And at your school, you have one of my former students actually, and he was actually the one that conducted the equity audit there at your campus. He did a great job. But now that things are better, now that we have vaccinations and we probably begin to hit it hard and be able to support the schools, more effectively and more face-to-face if we can. The one thing that I know you mentioned was, students are actually getting acquainted with the technology. And I think that is a good thing, because now when they are ready for college, they have that experience in being able to even go and have a degree online if they want to. They may even work and then go to school via online and be able to get their degrees that way. So I think even though we have some negative things happening, I think there's some other positive things in that sense, that now it has forced us to be more technologically oriented. And in that sense, then students will be more up to date in real world experiences, especially in preparation for college. Another thing, yes.
Melissa has a question, and I think it's, I don't know if you had it on the list already. How have parents been responding to the change? She says, I know there are many aspects of this question, but what is the first thing that comes to mind? We've been working with families all over the state, and a grandmother raising grandchildren in the Valley in South Texas. Her grandchild said, Abuelita, I need Google Classroom. And we looked at and said, no conozco a Google ni a la mamá de Google. I don't know Google or Google's mother. In other words, the people raising these children that don't have technology in their skills, are hanging on. So what do the panelists think?
Go ahead, Rawan, what do you say about that?
So what first comes to mind when I think about parents responding to the change, parents have been phenomenal. Guardians have been phenomenal. They've been true troopers. They're working extremely hard. They're reaching out. They're asking questions when they don't know. And something else that comes to mind as far as the parents responding to change, yes, we do have parents and guardians or grandparents that are caring for their grandchildren, and they don't know they don't know how to use the technology, and so it's hard for them to support, but they do reach out. And there are times when, I kid you not, we sit there for an hour with an individual parent or grandparent, and we guide them through it on Zoom. Another thing that comes to mind is I want my kid back in school, in-person instruction, like now, because they're not learning the same at home. And so, of course, we want them here. We would love to have them here, but we can only bring so many children in safely. But overall, my parents have been phenomenal, very supportive, very blessed with our parents.
Cruz.
This experience has really humbled not only myself, but our staff when it comes down to what parents are experiencing, what families are experiencing. At the end of the day, it comes down to the communication and the approach on how we communicate to parents. It's it's a blessing to be able to have majority of our parents that are very responsive, and they're quick to support their child, but at the same time, it's not We don't struggle too much with the fact that we call a parent and we can't get a hold of a parent because numbers are disconnected, so forth, so on, right? So with that said, what has really helped is, for example, our lead population, our campus administrator that oversees, the EL population and does TELPAS and all those things, right? That obviously we had to make sure that we meet those needs of those kids. He communicates almost on a daily basis through Remind 101, and it's also in Spanish in that home language that parents are not just gonna, oh, I'm gonna block the number, or I'm gonna just kind of delete it, right? So that has been very productive. Also, the fact that, as y'all mentioned, Rawan and Timothy or Dr. Vaughn, I know y'all mentioned about them, you have both sides of the coin. You have those parents that feel very comfortable with technology, that are able to support their child to a certain level. And then you have the ones that obviously, as I believe it was Mr. Montemayor that started talking about some of these parents don't know not even how to turn on a computer, right? And then you have also the outsiders out there that they just feel like, no, I gotta send you to school because you're not doing anything here at home, right? So they have adapted well. At the beginning, I'm sure everybody experienced the same thing. There was a lot of emotions going through that people, that's how they were reacting more to it. But then as we continue to communicate more and more in details and have that support mechanism there, then they started feeling more at ease that, you know what, the school is actually there to support my child. And they're gonna do whatever it takes to ensure my child is put in the best situation to receive that well-deserved high quality of education that we're offering them. So that's where it goes.
Very good. How about Dr. Vaughn? Anything to add to that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Real quick, definitely going back to what both my colleagues were saying, the biggest piece that I'm really very cautious and very focused on is what Mr. Cruz said, not isolating our families who are Spanish speaking. What I've noticed sometimes is that we, not on purpose, overlook some of the small nuances of making sure that you have information that's intelligible for our families who are Spanish speakers. Oftentimes, you send something out in English and not even think, you got to automatically make sure that's translated in Spanish. And even something as simple as sending out a robocall, you may have to start the robocall off in Spanish first, because if the family get online and they hear English, they automatically click the phone. So it's just trying to figure out different ways of how to engage our families who are Spanish speaking, because they all belong to us. I'm gonna tell you all this. I took a shot, man, in July, and I ran, in June, excuse me, and I ran a Zoom meeting, and I read the whole script in Spanish. The script, somebody tutored me in how to read that entire script in Spanish. Now I got a little Spanish background because I'm originally from California. And so I do know how to speak a little bit of Spanish, but I don't know all the words and everything. So I had one of our AP Spanish teachers tutor me on how to present information to our families as a principal in Spanish. I just want our families to know that we're fighting as hard as we can to ensure that we're not isolating anyone. So I'm gonna also be honest, we haven't had the same amount of complaints. When I first came in here, I'm gonna be honest, when the kids in here, it's always somebody running the central office. So during this pandemic, as we continue, as they know we're nurturing their children and loving on their children and fighting the love on them, we're feeding them in our district. Our district is doing so many things to love on the families in the community. They know that we're putting their physiological needs above all that other stuff. We want to make sure you got food, water, the basic pieces of survival. And so we haven't had a whole lot of fussing and arguing and all that kind of stuff that sometimes comes with, and especially in the shift, comes with the territory. So I'm very blessed that our district has done a lot of pieces. Our police department in Edgewood is amazing. We have a resource center right here in our district that hands out fresh food, produce, groceries, clothing. I mean, anything you could think of. They help families pay their rent bill. I mean, all that kind of stuff going on in Edgewood. And so I think a lot of these things, as this pandemic has come out and said, hey, some of the fans said, man, we got it going on in Edgewood. So we haven't had a whole lot of complaints, and I'm blessed. I'm thankful to the Lord that we have not, because I really think our parents are seeing that we care about them in our district. And this has really illuminated a lot of the resources we have to nurture them. But the biggest thing for me is not ostracizing our Spanish speaking families, because oftentimes I feel like we overlook them and everything's in English, or we isolate them. And we're fighting as hard as we can to ensure that everybody has that, like my colleague said, that equitable experience in this process.
It's definitely very important that we value parents, that we value them. Because when we show them, not only that we say, but that we demonstrate that with our actions, they do anything for you, to support you, their child, and also the school, right? And they're so important. If we didn't have parents, we wouldn't have kids, we wouldn't have schools, we didn't have jobs, right? But we need to really nurture them and respect them and show them that we value them. Not the blaming or the deficit mindset that we have to fix the parents or fix the family. It's not about that at all. They have a lot of assets that they need to bring in to the school to get things done, properly. And when you do those things, parents are the first advocates of you and of everything that has to be done for the school. So that is critical. Thank you for that. What are some ways your teachers have been effective? I know some of you have already talked about the different programs that you use, the Nearpod and all those other research-based practices. But anything else that you want to add to that piece in terms of effective teaching practices for students to be successful during the pandemic? How about Mr. Cruz?
So we ask our students, what we want of our students is to be able to come into a safe learning environment. We want them to take risk. We want them, and it's okay if at first they don't succeed, and then that's why we're there as educators. So there's nothing changes for the expectations that we have for our teachers, and it should be the same way when it comes on to that. During this pandemic, with the different types of delivery of instruction with asynchronous and synchronous instruction, we want them to take risks and resources for instruction. All this hybrid in-person instruction and communication tools that they are having to adapt and get used to and get more from, and pretty much they're educating themselves with this, right? And that support mechanism, you want to be able to, for our teachers that are your master teachers, and through IDRA and the Holsworth, those funds that are allocated to IDRA for our master teachers to be able to continue their great work that they're doing. Also the Holsworth that is funded through the HEB family, and those funds are there to support the teachers so that they can get better in their arts and their science that they do, right? And in essence, that is what the teachers have really shown, have really outshined other staff members or other areas, other educators, because they are willing and they're able to take that risk. They have that, as Ms. Hammoudeh said, they have that growth mindset. And if you have that growth mindset, then everything else will follow, and success will come. But if you don't have that growth mindset, then regardless if you're going through a pandemic or not, the results will be the same, and that's kind of where we're at with that. So,
Rawan, you want to add to it?
So of course, like we had said, the implementation of the research-based practices and whatnot that I had already mentioned previously that I was so proud of, but also they've really worked hard at developing those relationships with students, which is very different in the virtual setting. And we know that if you don't have a relationship with your students, then your students are not going to work for you. And so that has been a big piece, and they still hold them to those high expectations, as well as advocating for kids and being innovative to ensure that students' needs are met. For example, kids need manipulatives for math, right? They need their base 10 blocks when they're working on composing and decomposing numbers. And so they've put together packets, they've put together resource baggies, and they're like, hey, we're gonna have a drive at the back of the school where parents are gonna drive by, and this is how we're gonna do it. And they lay it out so that their kids can have the resources and materials that they need, so that it's as close as it would be here in the in-person setting. They're still engaging in their data analysis, identifying the student misconceptions, and they're addressing students' individual needs, and they continue to cycle through with the continuous data analysis process to monitor and adjust their action plans. They found a way for student-to-student communication. We know that students need that piece, especially our L's, right? That's really important for them. And they are doing it. They're doing it. Very proud of them. They've been effective at everything they've tried to do. I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but they are that phenomenal. Very proud of them.
Very good. That actually comes from the leader too, right? The leader models, right? You guys are role models for them. You model for them, and then you expect them from them, right? It's the same thing here. How about for you, Dr. Vaughn?
Real quick, I know I already shared a lot on things that we're doing as far as with Nearpod, Flipgrid, Desmos, MS Teams, utilizing Schoology. Our district is moving to Schoology next school year, so we're in that process. But one of the biggest pieces or components that our district was able to do is we developed the calendar, as our district developed the calendar, we tied in these intercession weeks. And so we have these intercession weeks that are embedded throughout the district calendar for children, for acceleration, for remediation, for different processes that may be going on the campus side, because we have schools of innovation in our district. So I really am thankful and appreciative that our district had the foresight, the SLT had the foresight to know that we had to embed those intercession weeks throughout the calendar year. And it's really been paying off. We had, of course, you're learning as you're going, you learn by doing. We know that terminology. And so it's getting better as we're progressing through the school year. So that's a huge accomplishment, and kudos to our SLT and our district, man, for really having that foresight and vision to know we need to have those intercession weeks embedded throughout the school year due to this pandemic process. Hopefully, I really like the intercession process. We may keep it, we may not, but that was something else that was really a blessing to our children.
Right, now you have to talk a lot of things about what you have done at your campuses. Now, what I would like for you to address at this particular question is, what do you recommend for other administrators or school leaders in adapting to COVID-19? What suggestions and recommendations do you have for others that they can actually implement, or at least seek to implement at their schools, and that perhaps you could be the mentors for them, right, in implementing those recommendations that you have for them. How about, let's start with Mr. Cruz. What recommendations do you have for other administrators in this COVID era?
I think I can go on and on with recommendations, but I'll start out with that growth mindset and be open-minded with everybody. You really have to ensure that your staff, that they're valued. I mean, you have to empower them, provide them those growth opportunities, because you will not gonna succeed. You will not be successful without failure. You have to have failure at different things in order for us to be able to grow and be successful. I remember, a few years ago, and I won't say how many years ago, but it's been a while, that, I had a great mentor that said, you know what? I mean, in order for you to be brave, you have to have fear, you know, and it's okay. It's okay for all the what we're going through with the fear and the uncertainty and where we're going, the direction, or how is all this going to come together. Build relationships with each other, not only with your campus and across the district, across districts in the city, but also network of support, because everybody out there is experiencing the same thing. And across the great state of Texas, please be a part of a network support that have great ideas, way of doing things. That way you can kind of take, you know, I know people say, well, I'm going to steal them. Yeah, you're stealing it from them, but you're actually borrowing them so that you can implement them in your, you know, with whatever your needs are going to be on your campuses. Again, we're all experiencing the same obstacles, and we're all in this together. So that is the main, I guess, the main advice and what I recommend for administrators to kind of work on. If they're not great at it right now, it's okay. Continue working on it so that it just becomes a better place for everybody.
Dr. Vaughn.
All right, thank you, Dr. Avilés. Definitely, I mean, we all on the same wavelength with the growth mindset. If you don't have that growth mindset, if you're stuck in a fixed mindset, it's going to be very difficult for you as an administrator in this new wave of education and what we're dealing with. Also, I said this earlier, being able to pivot on the drop of a dime, man. We're getting so many things thrown at us. Especially we're coming up to the month of March. It'll be a year where we've been dealing with this pandemic. Each principal on this line can probably tell you we've been through about 37 phases of what's happening in the process of dealing with what we're having to deal with on the campus, with safety plans, with this plan, with that plan. So, you know, so we really have to really be able to pivot at the drop of a dime, because that's just kind of where we're going. And also, I would say administrators definitely would need to have some type of technological, they need to be technologically savvy in this particular era, because you're going to have to use this technology. The technology is really a blessing in different ways, because now you can connect with somebody over in Massachusetts or in California, because you can run a Zoom call and we can all get on here together. And like my colleague was saying, Mr. Cruz, we can learn from each other all throughout the country without having to fly there or have this conference there. We can conference right like we're doing right now in this webinar. Boom, everybody from all over the world, the country can come in and talk about experiences they've been able to deal with and overcome. Once again, as a leader, the leader is a servant to all. The leader, I believe in Sir Giovanni, servant leadership, and not by lip service, but that having that great level of empathy. You know, as a leader now, I mean, it's no longer that managerial style, that dictatorial style. You've got to have a level of empathy to understand that folks they're going through different things. Of course, you know, we got, you know, folks having to be out on leave because of COVID and quarantine. All these different things have happened. So having great levels of empathy, also having candor, being frank with people, being very direct about things you know you need to happen on your campus for your children and your people that you serve, not being passive aggressive about it, not funneling in the status quo, being on that edge, because that's the type of leaders that we're going to have in this next wave of education. And then lastly, I believe in this, having a righteous indignation about injustices that try to permeate or filter in our schools, that try to, you know, create disruption or confusion. We have to have a serious righteous indignation to where we stand up for the right causes for our kids and for our communities, and not back down and let things happen that we know as leaders it should not happen. So that's something I talk to. I have some teachers on our campus who are going through a master's program at UTSA. Dr. Avilés has nurtured them. And then we have different programs. We have through NIET, we have teacher leaders. I say, hey, leadership is a calling. Leadership is a vocation. Leadership is an anointing. Everybody doesn't have an anointing to lead. But if you have that anointing and you get around the right people who can sharpen your iron, you can be the leader you need to be to serve other people. So that's where I am with those who are in administration, those who aspire to be administrators. Those are the things that, hey, in this new wave, we got to be ready for.
Rawan, how about for you?
I definitely believe in transparency with all stakeholders, whether it be your community, your teachers, your students, just having that transparency. And when decisions are made, you definitely want to make decisions collaboratively, but sometimes you've got to make that decision on the spot. And when those decisions are made, you need to share the why, the rationale, so that people understand why those decisions are made, because we are thinking about the organization as opposed to I'm in my classroom or I'm in my home, and that's where I function. And so that's what I'm thinking about. That way they have a clear understanding of why. It's not because I want to implement this because I feel like it this morning, but the rationale behind it. Definitely that continuous communication and collaboration with all stakeholders, involving them in the planning and the implementation, whether it's the safety protocols, the academic plan, whatever it is, and continuously monitoring it. What are the grows? What are the glows? Okay, so what are we going to do next? How are we going to make it better? And just remembering that when it comes to the classroom at the moment, none of us have taught in a virtual setting. And so they're truly the experts because they do it on a daily basis. And so definitely tapping into that. I would say teach in a virtual setting if you're an administrator. I know that there was an instance where we didn't have enough subs, and it was like the admin team was in the classroom. I was teaching 4th grade math, and good God, it is a beast. It is not as easy as our teachers make it look. That way you have a clear understanding of, or a snippet of what it feels like and how challenging it truly is. Having teachers share instructional videos. If you've got swivels, have teachers record themselves, because those practices, that's how we're going to build capacity throughout campus as we're pivoting. And then maintaining those high expectations. So we are going through a pandemic, but we have to remember that we cannot sacrifice our children's education no matter what, because that's an equity issue. And so we know that there are gaps, but we can't afford for them to grow wider just because we're not holding those high expectations. And if something needs to change, like Dr. Vaughn said, be clear and frank about it. This is what needs to change. This is what needs to happen. And here is the support so that you can do it. Advocate for your teachers, advocate for your students, and advocate for your community, because that is your role, that is your job. And if you don't do it, nobody else is gonna do it. Of course, providing that social emotional support, like I said earlier, to teachers, just being there to listen, and keeping in mind that they may have a smile on their face, but there could be so much more going on at home that they're dealing with. And network with other administrators, other leaders, because it is a lonely job. It was before COVID, and we know it is much more difficult and challenging at the time. Smile and stay calm. Never let your staff see you lose your mind in your office. Then walk out with a smile, because you are the captain. And if you see that you're smiling and you look calm, then that will help them stay calm. Running down the hall on fire, I don't know. It's going to cause a lot of turmoil on campus.
Great. I like the fact that you mentioned being empathetic, being authentic, being transparent, being supportive. When you do all these things, you build resiliency and you build other leaders in your campuses. And that's some of the things that we need to do. Anything that, we here at IDRA are willing to support and help anybody. So reach out if you need anything from us. We will be there to support you. And I know that, Rawan, you used to have the Value Youth program at your campus. but because of COVID, we have other things, but we're actually providing other resources. We're trying to actually implement that at Southwest, and hopefully next year will be different. But we are in the process of finalizing this webinar. The last question will be, and if we can actually do it as quick as possible, what do you think will continue, from the virtual learning when we return back to face to face? What are the things that you think will continue to happen even when virtual learning will stop and we'll go back to face to face? Go ahead and start, Mr. Cruz.
So I'll go real quick. So even after post-COVID, I believe that this is going to be a new norm. All lessons learned during this journey has really prepared me to lead in a different way, which in essence reinventing the way that we educate and learn. And that's really what we talked about. It was survival at first. It was being supportive, and then being able to reinvent how it's going to look. So we will continue to embed the great success that we have experienced and we've learned, obviously. We will celebrate those successes, and we will also learn and grow with the things that we can improve on and get better at. And with that, I think I'll end with that piece as well.
Dr. Vaughn?
Yes, ma'am. Real quick, in a minute. Like my colleague said, the technological platforms will be with us. Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, Zoom, that's going to be around. Here's another piece. I really believe a lot of districts are going to start to try to develop some type of virtual school within a school. So I think that's coming down. I don't know how, but I really think a lot of ISDs are going to have to think outside the box and probably develop some type of virtual school within the district to accommodate young people who may want to continue in this remote type of learning environment. So that's kind of what I'm seeing coming down the pike or coming down our way. But this is definitely here to stay with us. Thank you.
Rawan?
I absolutely see it sticking around as a way to enrich learning experiences, to bring the real world into the classroom. Our kids, I might not be able to take them to the beach so that they can see dolphins, but you know what? The technology is going to help with that piece, as well as the way to differentiate instruction, because now I can have a classroom full of students and I can have 5 students working on a particular standard that they struggled with, another 5 over here with another standard, and so on and so forth. That differentiation piece is what I truly see making a huge impact and sticking around.
Great. Any other questions from the participants? Are there any other questions on the chat? No other questions?
No questions.
Okay, well, we know you mentioned a lot of these things before, so to recap and to summarize, you mentioned that it is important, extremely important, to be observant of your students, what's going on. You see a face, that sad face one day, a happy face another day, you want to ask what's going on. Same with the adults. I always tell that to my students in principalship. Make sure that you as a leader, you are very observant of what's going on. You may see a team, because I know this, I learned it from my own personal experience. I was over one time and my principal noticed that. He told me, Ms. Avilés, and what's going on? And I said, this is what's going on. I'm having to do all this studying for my test, for my principal certification. He told me, take a day off. You need that. And I didn't want to, because I have perfect attendance, but then I did. I listened to him. And I was a different person, the following day when I came back to school. I needed that break, and sometimes I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't because he observed it and told me about it. I didn't even know. So it is important that we have to be observant, that we have to have that listening ear, that we have to be supportive, that we provide resources, that we're the go-getter person. Tap into the different organizations that can help us. Like I said, IDRA is here in your backyard. We're here to serve. And there's many other organizations out here in the city that can help, support you and your schools and your communities. And again, it is important to then be that leader. You're the role model. You're the one that is under the microscope all the time, right? And that you are building other leaders. And I think this is something that help, even though sometimes we see something negative, like the pandemic, but a lot of great things have come out of that, right? Being able to promote and to build more leaders within the campus and seeing and building that family type of setting where everybody's helping each other. So it's been a great experience. I just want to say thank you to our panelists. I like to give them a clap, for some of the great things that you mentioned. You guys definitely are great. And we thank you for all the important information that you share with everyone here today at our webinar. We appreciate all who attended as well and participated in today's discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on principal leadership. We all know how challenging this could be. And we know that no matter how much experience you had, right, you may have been an expert, and had 20 years under your belt, but when COVID hit, it felt to you like you were a novice, like you didn't know, no experience, right? Because you didn't know where to look for. It was actually all by trial and error, by talking, by, hey, what do you know? It is important to have those networks. Hey, listen, this happened to me. What ideas do you have? It's important to check with each other, and we grow from each other. So you can learn more from about IDRA educator resources and IDRA EX South at www.idra.org. You can also review and share today's recorded webinar with all of its attached resources and related content on our website. We will see everyone at our next webinar. Until then, you take care of yourselves. I really enjoyed the conversation with y'all, and you made me proud, and I love y'all.